Mi Moshe ad Moshe, lo kam Moshe. We come together to mourn today a great teacher in Israel, as we mourn Rav Moshe Kahn, Moshe Yosef ben Chaim u'Michla HaKohen. We're going to hear a number of speeches, a number of eulogies, to try in some way to capture the tremendous contributions of Rav Moshe Kahn. And as we do so, we recognize the great task that lies before us. We feel the words of the Torah itself, Madua lo yiresem, l'daber ba'avdi b'Moshe. The great task which lies before us, we are to properly eulogize and to properly remember Rav Moshe Kahn. I'm going to turn now to a number of Rav Moshe's colleagues and friends to recite a Kapitel Tehillim in his memory. I'm going to turn now first to Rabbi Dr. Schatz to recite a Kapitel Tehillim.
Shreyu ish asher lo halach batzas v'shoim v'derech hatoim lo amod moshav leitzim lo yashav ki im b'soras Adonai chevtzo uv'soraso yegel yomam v'loyla v'yo ka'etz shosul al palgei moyim asher perio yitain be'ito v'yolehu lo yibol v'chol asher ya'aseh yatzliach lo chen harashoim ki im kamotz asher to defend ruach al kein lo yokum harashoim b'mishpat the chatoim ba'adas tzadikim. Ki yodei Adonai derech tzadikim v'derech rishoim tovet.
We turn now to Rav Yosef Blau.
Mizmor leDavid, Adonai mi yagur ba'alecha, mi yishkon bahar kodshecha. Holech tamim ufoel tzedek, v'dover emes bilvavo. Lo ragal al shono, lo asol reyehu ra'ah, v'cherpa lo nasa al krovo. Nivzeh be'einav nim'as, v'sirei Adonai yechabed. Nishbal lo harav lo yamir, kaspo lo nasan b'neshech, v'shochad al nakilo lo koch. Osei ela lo yimot la'olam.
I'm going to turn now to Rav Moshe's brother-in-law, Lenny Glotzer, to recite a Kapitel Tehillim.
Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, benot deshe yarbitzeni, amem nuchot nahaleni, nafshi yishovev. Yancheni b'mag l'tzedek l'man shmo, gam ki yelech b'geitz al movet, lo yorah ki yeta imadi, shiftecha mishantecha hemi nachamuni. Tarok l'fnai shulchan neged tzorai, dishanta b'shem en roshi, kosi rivaya. Achta v'chesed yirtefuni kol yemei chayai v'shafti b'veit Adonai la'orach yomim.
Thank you. I'd like to apologize to my colleagues, to the many people who should be coming up to recite Kapitel Tehillim, men and women who could so properly and should remember this great teacher. But if we were to do that, we would be here for days. I'd like to acknowledge Rav Moshe's family, who are the ones who are closest to this loss, although, again, all of Israel mourns this great teacher. I'd like to acknowledge Rav Moshe's sisters, Shirley and Toby, and his children, Eliezer and Edith, Tzvi, Chavi and Rafi. To acknowledge his grandchildren, Aviel, Hillel, Anael, Yasmin, Laila, Kira, and Amali. And of course, his Eshes Chayil, his beloved wife, and dear friend and confidant, Chana. We say, Ateret Zekenim b'nei banim, v'tiferet banim avotam. This was certainly true for Rav Moshe, who was loved and was cared for so beautifully by his family for so many years. We're going to hear now a number of Hespedim. We're going to hear first from his son Eliezer, his daughter Chavi. We're then going to hear from a number of his students. We're going to hear from Dr. Stephen Parmit, from Sally Mayer over Zoom, and then from Rabbi Dr. J.J. Schachter. Eli.
My father was an amazing person. I will try in a few brief moments and probably fail to relate some of the qualities that stand out about him, as well as some of the memories that I have that hopefully try to illustrate who he was. First, he was a great Talmid Chacham. My father had extensive yeshiva training. He was born in Kingston, New York in 1951. Then, when he was really young, his family moved to Detroit, where he lived a few years. Then eventually his family moved back to Queens, where he grew up. He attended Yeshiva of Central Queens for high school. Then he went to YU for college and never left. After graduating college, he started the Smicha program, and he achieved Smicha in 1975, and then he continued studying in the Kollel for a few more years, and then eventually achieved Yad in Smicha. He was in Rav Soloveitchik's shir for many years, and he also studied under other Rabbeim too. In particular, he had very fond memories of Rabbi Yerucham Gerarlik, who was actually the shadchan who introduced my mom to my father, and he had very admired him a lot too. After Smicha, my father eventually started teaching at JSS for a few years, and then eventually transferred full-time to Stern, where, of course, the rest is history. And also, he taught at Drishor for several decades as well. My father loved his yeshiva years. He always had funny and amusing stories to tell us about it, but of course, there really isn't time here to go to mention them. Though I was urged to at least provide one story, so I'll try. Here goes one story. He used to tell us how before he got married, he used to learn in the Beis Medrash till about 1 every night till 1 in the morning, and but then every Thursday night, a group of guys at 1 a.m. a group of guys like to go downstairs to the gym in the same building that housed the Beit Midrash, and play basketball for after at 1 a.m. And it was Thursday night because Friday there was no shiur at that time. There's no shiur on Fridays. So, but the problem was that the guards would close the gym at 2 a.m. So that only left them an hour to play basketball downstairs. And so this obviously wouldn't do. So eventually, my father and his friends decided that somebody needs to go talk to the administration, and it fell to my father to talk to them. So my father likes to say how he actually met with the administrator. I forgot who it was, and they actually listened, and they opened the gym longer. They kept the gym open longer. I can't remember if it was just a few hours longer or all night, and they were able to play well into the morning or late hours of the night. Now, despite all all of my father's yeshiva training and scholarship, he was still very, very down to earth and practical. He liked to get his hands dirty, so to speak, on, for example, he liked cooking and baking. He always liked to bake challah for Shabbos and also cholent for Shabbos. He never thought that was beneath him or something a rabbi shouldn't do. He liked doing work around the house. He once had this great idea to try to plant grass in front of our house all by ourselves. He ordered a dump truck full of soil and had us spread it out and plant seeds in full view for the whole community because we lived on a rather busy street in Teaneck. In addition, my father was not dogmatic in any way. He felt very strongly about this. He never tried to encourage me or my siblings to follow in his footsteps, or he urged us to follow. He urged us to do what we wanted, and he had no interest in making his children carbon copies of himself, and he felt really strongly about this. And then finally, one really important aspect. Probably one of the most important aspects my father want to share is, of course, his teaching ability and his gift as a teacher. As his son, I had the privilege to learn Gemara with him one-on-one for many years, and if I gained any ability to learn, it was all from him. Honestly, I don't think I had any Rebbe in yeshiva who was able to teach as well as he had. He had like a certain type of clarity and a very intuitive sense of how to effectively teach, as I'm sure all his students can attest to. For example, he always stressed the importance of being able to actually read and understand the text in the original Hebrew Aramaic language without the aid of any translations like Art Scroll. He always made sure that when we learned together, we understood everything. Every word was looked up, possibly in a dictionary if we didn't know what it meant. And he never, in addition, he made sure to, when we learned together, it was always with a very high level of rigor. He never liked faking one's way or hand-waving through anything. And he felt this was a foundation for learning, for one people to learn on one's own. And I'm sure, no doubt, his students can share a lot more about this. And my oldest son, too, Aviel, had the privilege to be able to also learn with my father one-on-one for some time. Even when my father was suffering and undergoing difficult cancer treatment, he still found time to learn with my son, usually reviewing the Gemara that he was learning at the time in school. I remember after once my one of the first few times my Aviel was learning with my father, he commented after finishing learning with him, and this was over Zoom because we don't live close by. He said, "Now I actually understand it." So before my father passed away, it really saddened him that he wouldn't be around to see all his grandchildren grow up. But I continue to learn with them and grow with them. But I pray to Hashem that they'll instead be able to hopefully learn from his legacy and the impact that still lives on in all his children and family and friends and students whose lives he touched. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ali. We turn out to Chavi to share words of Hesped.
It's an impossible task to eulogize my father, but I know he would have wanted me to try. Not many people also get to call their father their Rebbe. And I am so grateful for that. Not only did I have the privilege to take his shir at Stern and GPATS for 4 years, over the years, my father was my posek, my chavrusa, and most importantly, my role model. He set the bar so high for what it meant to be a Rev and teacher that no one else was ever able to fill his shoes. Sorry. From a young age, I recognized my dad's commitment to Talmud Torah and specifically advanced Gemara learning for women. I remember being mad at him because he told all his friends that I only wanted Sfarim for a bat mitzvah gift. He also somehow convinced the principal of my high school to arrange for me my own extracurricular Gemara shir since it wasn't part of the regular curriculum. This kind of worked for 2 years. In the beginning of my junior year, though, I remember coming to meet my new Gemara teacher. He handed me a photocopied page of different Mamar Mekomos, and like the good daughter I was, I told him that I thought we would be learning from the actual Daf Gemara, and maybe we could try learning something from Nashim or Nezikin. After that day, I never saw him again. My father talked repeatedly about Amelis Batorah, about the process of learning, of applying yourself, engaging in analysis until you truly comprehend each and every word of what the text says. He believed strongly that this process was transformative, that it shaped the mind and soul and brought you to a deeper understanding of the wisdom and values of Torah Judaism. And this ultimately made you a better person and Jew. He felt deeply that it was wrong to deprive Jewish women of this experience. Recently, he told me a story that I had never heard before, but which encapsulates so much of his approach to teaching and learning, which my mom shared, I think, with Rabbi Strachler last night. His high school principal told him in some assembly and his fellow classmates that when they learn Torah, they need to learn without emunah. Meaning, if Rashi tells you that this is what the pasuk says in Mishlei, you don't believe it. You don't just accept it. You have to go and look it up and read it and think for yourself whether it makes sense. As his student in Stern and GPATS, I worked harder than any of my other classes, actually. While all his students in our class knew that I was his daughter, he treated me the same as everyone else. No shortcuts for me. I, too, had to say it better. Friends, though, used to say that when I answered a question correctly, when he said, "She's right," he said it with a slightly bigger smile or with a little more zeal than usual, and I like to think that was true. For myself and fellow students, my dad was our link to the Masorah. His faith in us eliminated any imposter syndrome we may have had. He made us all know that not only were the halls of Torah Sheba'al Peh open to us, but also that we belonged there. And he did this with such humility, never asking for kavod. Even when he was sick and it was hard for him to speak, when giving shir would wipe him out for the rest of the day, he still taught over Zoom until the end, until he truly physically no longer could. As a father, he was always respectful and supportive of my and my brother's choices and dreams. Like Ellie said, he never tried to indoctrinate us, and that was really important to him. He was just there for us, no matter what. And he celebrated our successes, and he consoled us when we failed. And he was with us every step. Along the paths we chose for ourselves. sorry. I'll get there. Almost done. He loved my mother deeply. It was this love and respect for her as a therapist that led him to pursue a second career and become a psychotherapist so late in his life. He supported my mother when she returned to graduate school and her career started, cooking dinner most nights for us, always the same thing, but still doing it, and preparing for Shabbos. Until the end of his life, when the day was over, he would sit on the couch next to my mom with his arm around her, and they would playfully bicker over what to watch on television. He usually won. He modeled for my brothers and I what it meant to be a partner. When my 10-year-old daughter Yasmin was around 8, she decided that she was going to go to Stern 2 for college and take Zadie's class just like I had done. And while I'm devastated that she and her sisters will never have that opportunity, looking around here today and reading all the amazing tributes to him pouring in from all his students around the world, I'm hopeful that one day they will understand the legacy he left and know that their Zadie epitomized Moshe Emes V'Torato Emes.
Thank you, Chavi. We're going to turn now to Dr. Stephen Parmitz, who will share words of hesped.
Rabbi Moshe Yosef Kahn was an extraordinary individual, one who achieved a measure of greatness. I don't say this as a figure of speech. It's not hindsight colored by my affection and respect for my dear friend Moshe in the course of over 30 years of friendship, during which we shared many Shabboses, many Shavuos and Shmini Atzeres holidays. We raised our children together, and I had the opportunity to learn with him. Moshe Kahn's love of learning and teaching Torah are well known, and they earned him his exceptional reputation. But that reputation gives only an inkling of what he offered to those who were fortunate enough to study with him. I had the privilege of learning with him for 10 years. The circumstances which brought about that opportunity are as revealing of the person that Moshe Kahn was as was the experience itself of learning with him. I had not had the opportunity to learn in yeshiva, and as my 40th birthday came around, I was becoming more and more frustrated at my inability to actively learn Gemara the way it was supposed to be learned. My wife shared this predicament with Moshe, just basically partly to unburden and partly to see if he might be able to provide some direction, some suggestion. And without hesitating even a moment, he said, I'll learn with him. Now, if you stop to think, this is a man in the throes of raising a young family who is deeply involved, as we all know, with preparing and giving shiurim in many different venues. For someone, like that, to even entertain the possibility of taking on a charge like myself, let alone to do it without even thinking about it, is really extraordinary, and it basically tells you who he is. His learning style, and I'm going to be echoing some of the things that his children and students have already said, but his learning style was such that every word was precious. Thus, his insistence on using the Jastrow dictionary at every turn and nothing else. Because he insisted that one had to know the shorish, the root of whatever word it was that he was interested in, not only to give him the fullest possible understanding of the word in the context that he had found it, or she had found it, but also to be able to apply it, to extrapolate to future words. And he knew that if the understanding of the word would be flawed, if the word being the building block of the concept, then the understanding of the concept would be erroneous. And this was intolerable and unacceptable to Rav Moshe. He insisted that every concept be understood and articulated with perfect clarity. And then and only then could you earn that endearing smile of his that was his signature, the smile of approval. He would ask cogent, penetrating questions which went to the heart of the subject that was being studied, and he would listen intently and pick up on even the most subtle hint of vagueness or confusion on the part of his student and pounce on it. And during this process, while he was waiting for the response, he would be motionless, he would be silent, and never did 15 seconds or 30 seconds seem so long or difficult as when I was learning with Moshe Kahn. I can only compare this rigor with the experience that I had when I had to take my board certification examinations in radiology, where I had a series, all of my peers and I had individually, one-on-one, half-hour sessions with experts in the field, where they would show case after case and wordlessly wait while we had to make the findings, identify the abnormal findings, and discuss their significance. No wiggle room, just as with Moshe, no wiggle room. In one case, the outcome was professional competence, and in the case of learning with Moshe Kahn, it was mastery of the material. His sole focus was to convey the Torah in its full fidelity, the Torah that he loved, exactly as it was meant to be understood, and to ensure that his students would take firm personal possession of the Torah that they learned. And he made his role, whether consciously or not, into a conduit. He was not a moderator. He was not an interlocutor. He was just a conduit of a precious cargo. And just as a physical conduit had to be free of any kind of impurity if it was to convey its contents as they had come into it, so Moshe Kahn's teaching was unsullied by any hint, any form of ego. He was never harsh. He was never overbearing. He was never impatient. The only difficulties a student of his had were the difficulties that were inherent in the complexity of the subject matter, never the manner of the teacher. His uncompromising rigor, combined with his heartfelt concern for his students, was his formula for success. One aspect of Rabbi Moshe Kahn that may not be so well known was his pointed sense of humor, softened by his obvious affection for the subject of that humor. It came into play frequently during my less illustrious moments of learning with him, and in many other situations as well. I relished being teased by my friend Moshe. Humility was Rabbi Kahn's very presence. His modest, reserved, soft-spoken demeanor was an accurate reflection of the inner Moshe Kahn. His exceptional patience and ability to learn, these characteristics do not flourish in one who is full of himself, but they were Moshe Kahn's mainstays in his teaching, in his therapy, in his social, personal, professional interactions. One of the Balei Musar once commented that many people will run away from honor, but unfortunately most will turn back to look over the shoulder to make sure that the honor is still chasing them. Moshe Kahn was one step ahead of that. He not only didn't bother to flee from honor, he was completely oblivious to it. It was a non-issue in his life. Very, very few people can this be said of, at least that I've encountered in my life, at any level, in any capacity. He was deeply concerned for others. When he asked how you were, you could hear in his tone and see in his manner that he was genuinely interested in the response. It was not just a perfunctory inquiry. His willingness to learn with me, for no compensation, no reciprocity, no accolade, was motivated solely by a desire to share Torah and at the same time to relieve the distress of one of his fellow creatures. In our conversations about personal matters, he was always empathic and insightful, and in his understated way, he always exuded warmth and caring. Chazal tell us that the choice of a child's name is divinely inspired and has a bearing on the type of person that the child will become. The name that Moshe Kahn created for himself bears a striking resemblance to the name that his parents gave him. He followed the lead of Moshe Rabbeinu as a passionate, devoted, and gifted teacher of Torah. He was a man who displayed true humility, which was the distinguishing characteristic of the most distinguished human being ever to live and ever to live in the future. And he was a lover of his fellow man, the very trait that led HaKadosh Baruch Hu to choose Moshe Rabbeinu for his mission. I have no difficulty envisioning our Moshe in a special place that he has earned for himself in Shemayim, basking in the radiance of Hashem Yisborach, serving as a trusted Melitz Yosher for his family and for all of us. And one day, with Bias HaMashiach B'Meher Yameinu, returning to us. On behalf of myself and my wife, I ask Mechila for anything we may have done to offend or hurt him. Yehi Zichro Baruch.
We're now going to hear Divrei Hesped from Sally Mayer. You can have the opportunity to turn your attention to the screen where she will address us.
Birshut all the Rabbanim and the teachers, Rebbe Kahn, children, the whole family, and all my fellow students of Rabbi Kahn, and everybody assembled. I'm humbled to be representing the thousands of students of my dear Rebbe, and also deeply concerned that I will not do justice to the giant that he was, but I will do my very best. It's a shame those who are gone and not here anymore. We are also deeply, deeply sad that our Rebbe is gone, and it's actually still hard to believe it. I was a student of Rabbi Kahn for years at both the Drisha Institute and Yeshiva University Stern College. He was my Rebbe Mufak, the teacher from whom I learned most of my Torah, and certainly my Derech HaLimud. I want to try to share with you from his student's perspective how important he was and is in our world. I view Rabbi Kahn as the father of women's Gemara learning, at least in the United States. Almost every woman that I know who learns Gemara had him as a teacher. And if they did not, many of them had a student of his as their teacher. He taught thousands of women, and he inspired many of his Talmidot to become teachers, thereby exponentially growing his influence. He did this all with a humility that is unparalleled. He never became famous. He just got up every morning for 40, 50 years and taught the sugya to the women in front of him who wanted to learn it. Rav Kahn taught us a derech halimut that was uniquely his. He was a student of Rav Soloveitchik and the Brisker Derech, but while in many Gemara Shiurim the conceptual ideas took precedence, as we've heard from other speakers, Rabbi Kahn insisted that the conceptual analysis spring from a close reading of the Gemara and the Rishonim. Every word, read every word, he would say to us. What are the 2 points Tosfos are making? No, you got the first one, but not the second one. Read it again. Because of his influence, thousands of girls have learned, of women and girls, have learned Gemara with a focus on close textual reading, because we all learned that from him. And then we went on to teach our students that way. I think they think that's the way everybody learns. And it's all because of Rabbi Kahn. He brought us all back to the text. I asked Rabbi Kahn recently how he came up with that approach. Where did he get that from? And he actually told me that it was from a colleague in YU's JSS program who had that approach to Tanakh, every word. And he said, I think I'm going to try that for Gemara. And so generations of women learned to approach Gemara in this way as well. Rabbi Kahn believed in us. He held us to a high standard. Never let us get away with an imprecise formulation or a confused idea. There was no soft bigotry of low expectations. He would gently but firmly lead us to a clear understanding, no cutting corners. He was at once demanding but patient, brilliant but humble. Rashi is not making a mistake. You are, he would say. He once shared with me with a chuckle when I visited him at Stern. Do you know what they call me here? Killer Kahn. Can you believe it? They call me Killer Kahn. And he smiled his signature smile. His shiurim made you come prepared. His tests were universally feared. But when you met him, he was the sweetest father-grandfather figure you could imagine. He was the perfect Rebbe for a generation of women starting out in the world of Gemara, which when I was his student 30 years ago, was a new thing, a fairly new thing. He was totally committed to halacha, totally faithful to the words on the daf, high expectations, but endless patience. We are all so thankful that Hashem sent him to this calling. No wonder so many of us decided to continue his derech and teach the next generation the Torah that he loved. He cared not only about learning, but he cared about each of us personally. I remember when I got engaged, my future husband and I spent a Shabbos at his Rebbe and a Shabbos at my Rebbe. Baruch Hashem, they both approved of our choice, and they both made brachot at our wedding. But it was not just deep and meaningful Torah that we learned from Rabbi Kahn. The pasuk in Malachi says, "Ki siftei kohen yishmeru da'at, v'torah yivakshu mipihu, ki malach Hashem tzvakotu." The lips of the kohen will guard knowledge, and they will seek Torah from his mouth, for he is an angel of Hashem. The Gemara in Chagiga says that this pasuk means that we should really only be learning Torah from a Rebbe who is like an angel of God. Rabbi Kahn was a paragon of impeccable midot. He was humble and kind and patient and soft-spoken and thoughtful. He was a Malach Hashem Tzvakot, and we wanted to emulate him. I think his humility was the most striking midah about him. Va'ish Moshe anav me'od mikol ha'adam asher al pnei ha'adama. As we've heard already, the Torah says that Hashem says that Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble man in the world. And the Torah says that about Moshe Rabbeinu in the story where his siblings speak Lashon Hara about him. And they say that Hashem spoke to them as well, and Hashem calls Moshe to witness the rebuke of Miriam and Aaron. But why? It seems that Hashem wanted Moshe Rabbeinu to hear what Hashem was going to say. Pal peh adaber bo. I speak to Moshe Rabbeinu face to face. B'chol beiti ne'amadhu. He's my most faithful person in all my house. I have a relationship with Moshe Rabbeinu that no one else has, Hashem says. But yet in that same passage, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble man in the world. And I thought about this recently when I went to visit Rabbi Kahn in Teaneck in November. Big zechut to sit recently with him and Rebbetzin Kahn. And there had been a Zoom last year where students from over 30 years expressed their Hakar Hatov to Rabbi Kahn and presented him with a book of Divrei Torah that had been prepared for him. It was a very, very moving evening. But when I asked Rebbetzin Kahn when we saw each other in November, whether Rabbi Kahn realized the impact that he has had on this world, she said he didn't really fully realize it. Like even after that Zoom where everyone just went on and on about it, he was really just too humble, I think, to really be able to accept it. Like Moshe Rabbeinu, who heard he was the greatest Navi to ever live, but was just still the most humble person in the world. Couldn't get past that anava. Every person is a whole world, tells us the Mishnah in Sanhedrin. The Mishnah says that we learn that from the fact that Adam Harishon was created alone, and look how many people have come from him. Rabbi Kahn was one person, but he taught so many women, and so many of those women became teachers who taught more people. He is responsible for my learning and for so many thousands and thousands of people's learning. I said to my students today, Sheli v'shelachen, shelohi. What I have and what you have is really due to Rabbi Kahn. Every person who leaves this world lives on through his family and the people he touched. I say to Rebbetzin Kahn and to the entire family, this loss I know is yours first and foremost. And it's also a loss to his students and to the Torah world. But Rabbi Kahn lives on in the incredible legacy he has left, in the Torah that he spread and continues to spread through his students and grand students and so on. We have lost a giant. Tei nishmato tzura b'tzura chaim.
We sometimes wonder, and I would say we probably often wonder, what difference can just one person make? I understand a school, I understand an institution, I understand a group, I understand a chabura, but one person? Just one person? What difference can one person make? And when we contemplate the life of Rav Moshe, the answer is obvious. This one person, made an enormous, enormous impact. He made a massive difference and leaves behind a legacy of extraordinary achievement. He was a son, he was a husband, a father, grandfather, family man, a friend. Chana asked me to speak for a few moments about his impact at Stern College, where he taught for some 40 years. And I want to acknowledge the input of my colleagues at Stern, Shoshana Schechter, the Associate Dean of Torah Studies, Dina Rabinovich, the Chair of Judaic Studies Program, the department, and Nechama Price, the Director of the GPATS program. Stern College is in their hands, and all of them were students of Rabbi Kahn's. The phrase B'nai Yisrael is ambiguous. Often it refers to the entire Jewish people, B'nai Yisrael. Sometimes it refers just to men. Kos Amar Lebeis Yaakov, V'saged Leb'nai Yisrael. V'limadetem Osam es B'neichem, B'neichem. But you notice in the Nusach HaBracha for the Birchas HaTorah, we do not say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a Melamei Torah L'Bnei Yisrael. That would be ambiguous. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a Melamei Torah La'amo Yisrael. Because Am Yisrael is not ambiguous. Am Yisrael is everybody. And Moshe Kahn taught us the fullness of what it means to be a Melamei Torah, La'amo Yisrael, to the Beis Yaakov, and not just to the B'nai Yisrael. In the course of more than 4 decades, he taught Torah the highest level to thousands of students. Rabbi Nit Meir mentioned thousands of students. I want to stop for a moment and repeat that phrase, because I want us to really focus on what that means. Thousands of students. Drisha and at Stern College, in all of the various courses that he taught, and also in GPATS that he was very instrumental in founding and where he taught ever since the beginning. And he taught serious Torah. He taught Bava Basra. He taught Rishonim inside. The Milchamis of the Ramban was one of his favorite texts. He taught his students not just the material, but he taught them how to learn. He taught them the halachic process. He gave them a derech to inspire them not only to listen in class and be excited about the material that he was presenting, but to give them an excitement and an inspiration to go beyond the classroom and to be able to engage in high-level Torah study for the rest of their lives. He gave them the skills to be able to do so. Rabbi Moshe Kahn had an agenda. He had one agenda and one agenda only, and that is to teach Torah at the highest level to women, and to bring women into the world of the highest level of Talmud Torah, to bring them closer to Torah, and thereby closer to the Ribono Shel Olam. And his impact is ongoing. We heard from one of the leading leaders of Torah education for women, a student of his. The three women who I mentioned earlier who are in charge of Stern College Torah studies are students of his. Virtually every single one of the American mechanchot who are teaching Torah today to women in Israel and in America are students of his. His students are the educators who perpetuate his teachings. And then when you stop and you think, so what difference can one person make? Stop for a second and think. To revolutionize a generation and future generations. Ledore doros. Ledore doros. Thousands of students who continue to teach and will continue to teach thousands and thousands of students. And he did it all in a very humble way, in a very quiet way. I was very touched by how his students spoke about him. They called him the gentle powerhouse, the unassuming giant. His Talmidot spoke and speak about him with both great respect, profound respect, and also great and profound affection. It's very rare. It's a human being as a teacher to be able to inspire students to the highest level of rigor and also to appreciate the smile and the warmkeit and the engagement and the encouragement. I see a lot of nodding in this room among his students who are gathered here, and there are hundreds and thousands who know exactly what I'm talking about. We will miss this incredible power of a person who changed the face, and I'm going to say it again, who changed the face of Torah study in our generation. Harav Moshe Yosef ben Chaim u'Michla HaKohen Tehei Nishmaso Tzrura B'Tzror HaChaim.
Just to share a quick couple of words to our community, to his students, and to the young women who will not have the opportunity to study with Rav Moshe, with Rav Kahn. We've heard a lot this morning about the style of Rav Moshe's teaching, about the character of kindness and brilliance and modesty, and how Rav Moshe conducted himself. I would like to add just one facet to our understanding of Rav Moshe Kahn and how he carries forward the legacy of Rav Moshe Rabbeinu as a Rav, as a teacher, and that is in the heroism, the strength with which he led. And this is something that was not obvious, but in thinking about the thousands that Rabbi Schachter described, I think it behooves us to remember that it was not just that he taught, but it was also the message that he conveyed in how he taught that's critical for us as a community and for his students to know and to continue. And that is that for Rav Moshe Kahn, teaching Jewish women was not a sug bet. It was not second class. That what he gave was the best. And he held his students to the highest of standards. And that's mechayev. That's something that we are all obligated to continue, each of us, and how it is that we continue his legacy. To be able to teach the Torah that he taught, to be able to recognize that in the history of our people, in the continuity of the Masorah that we are all a part of, that we all have a critical role to play in being able to understand that it was not the only option that was available 40 years ago when Rav Moshe began to teach, that it could have been a different methodology, but Rav Moshe would not allow that. And he did not do it with any fanfare. There were no advertisements of what happened in that classroom day in and day out. But what he set forward was something that will change the course of Talmud Torah long into the future, which is that his students got the real thing. There was no change in terms of the Masorah that he received from the Rav and what he passed on to the young women who stood before him in those classes. And so, yes, we have to pass on the anava. We have to pass on the chesed. We have to pass on this ability to connect to students of Torah. But we also must pass on this approach, this courageous understanding of what this derech halimud required, and to be able to recognize that there's a tremendous chidush in how it was that he taught Torah. We're going to now recite the Kel Malei Brachim in prayer. I turn now to Rav Moshe Kahn's brother-in-law, Rav Heshi Einsiedler, to recite the Kel Malei.
El mole rachamim shochein b'amoraimim hamsim nechon nechona tachas kanfei ashkina b'malos kedoshim etahorim kizora mashirim es moreno Rab Moshe Yosef Rav Chaim Michal HaKohen sheholach le'olamo בעבור שמשפחתו וכל מכיריו מתפללים באזכרת נשמתו בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בששי כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן.
We ask that the pallbearers please come forward. Turn and ask for draw near for Avram Hillel Levovitz, Yosef Chaim Golding, Chaim Groenstein, Aaron Schlanger, and Zvi Borenstein, please come forward.